You built your entire empire off debt, off other people's money, off bluffing, off smiling while signing deals with banks. And you think that makes you free? No, Grant. That makes you owned. That makes you the system's favorite puppet. I don't teach men to rent power. I teach them to become power. When Andrew Tate said that live, with his voice low but sharp, the silence after was heavier than any crowd reaction because it wasn't just a jab. It was a bullet wrapped in truth, aimed straight at one of the most polished faces of modern wealth, Grant Cardone. That moment didn't happen at the start of their feud. It happened at its peak, when reputations were already bruised, when fans were divided, and when something deeper was on the line, not just money, not just pride, but the question that fuels the entire world of so-called success. What is the right way to win? Is wealth built through discipline and independence, or through leverage and speed? Is it better to own little and control everything, or to control little but own 100 properties you can't touch without lenders and lawyers? Because this wasn't a debate about numbers. This was a war of values. And the battlefield was everything both men ever stood for. Grant Cardone, the king of scale, the champion of 10x, the guy who told the world that if you're not using debt, you're already behind, stood for calculated expansion. He taught people how to stretch their name beyond their bank balance. Real estate, systems, leverage. Don't save money, he once said. Use money that isn't yours and move faster than the people playing safe. Andrew Tate, the self-made storm who rose from nothing to become a symbol of raw dominance, never cared for that system. He built his empire differently, piece by piece, with his own hands, without depending on banks or financial instruments. He teaches men to be sovereign, dangerous, unbreakable. No middlemen, no permission, no apologies. For years they existed on parallel tracks, Grant with his stage lights and seminars, Tate with his Bugattis and war room monologues, until one clip changed everything. Grant posted a short video, less than 30 seconds. Poor people avoid debt. Rich people understand it. Wealthy people use it. That's the difference. It was classic Cardone. Smooth, confident, calculated. But that video struck a nerve, and not just with viewers. It was Tate who took it personally, and he didn't hold back. That same night, he went live and said, "You're telling men to sell their future to feel rich today. That's not mentorship. That's modern slavery." And from there, it erupted. People who followed both suddenly had to choose sides. Podcasts started debating the quote. Twitter threads turned into battlegrounds. Some influencers tried to stay neutral, but neutrality became weakness in a fight this loud. Comment sections weren't just noisy. They were ideological wars about masculinity, success, risk, freedom, and what it actually means to build something. Then it got worse. A private email surfaced, from Grant to Tate, respectful in tone but defensive in message. He wrote, "We don't have to play this game publicly. We're both trying to help people. Let's handle this like men, off the cameras." But it was already too late. The leak spread like fire. Nobody knew who shared it, but Tate didn't deny it. In fact, the next day he tweeted, "I don't shake hands with the machine, I destroy it." And just like that, the line was drawn. This wasn't a clash of brands. This was a war for the soul of the hustle generation. Because behind the millions of followers and seven-figure courses, there's a deeper question that every young man scrolling through YouTube is trying to answer. Who do I become? Do I borrow and scale like Grant? Or do I build and bleed like Tate? Do I grow through networks or through grit? And maybe even more important, who's really walking the talk? And who's just selling the image of success while quietly bowing to the system they pretend to fight? For nearly 3 days, Grant Cardone said nothing. No posts, no interviews, no defense. just silence. And in the world he helped build, a world that lives on momentum, on content, on staying loud, silence is blood in the water. Tate's camp knew it. His fans knew it. The algorithm definitely knew it. Clips of that leaked email were going viral in every language. Podcasts were reacting. Streamers were decoding every word. Even financial TikTok jumped in, comparing Cardone's portfolio structure to a house of cards balanced on borrowed bricks. And still, no response. Until it came. It wasn't a tweet. It wasn't a podcast. It was a YouTube video, titled with no clickbait, no emojis, just 2 words: the truth. Cardone sat alone in a minimalist office. No music, no edit cuts, just him and the camera. He looked tired, not weak, just worn down. Like a man who had spent decades climbing a mountain, only to realize someone else was now trying to burn it from the bottom up. "I didn't build this by pretending to be anything I'm not," he said. "Yes, I use debt. Yes, I scale fast. But I've never told anyone they had to do it my way. If you don't like my strategy, don't use it. But don't act like I lied. I never faked my wins." It was calm, professional, even classy. But that was the problem. Because in Tate's world, calm means soft. Measured means controlled. And classy? That's just branding when you're scared to be real. And real was exactly what Tate gave next. Within hours, he posted a 1-minute video standing on a balcony in Dubai, overlooking the marina, no shirt, glass of water in hand, speaking like he wasn't trying to prove a point, just stating facts he thought everyone should already know. "You built your empire playing with monopoly money," he said. "You think because you smiled in suits and signed papers with banks, you're safe. But let me ask you, Grant, what happens when the system you rely on decides you're no longer useful? You still rich then?" It didn't feel like a comeback. It felt like a verdict. Suddenly, people weren't just watching. They were choosing. And that's when the conversation got darker. Because if both of them were rich, then what exactly were they fighting about? The answer wasn't money. It was meaning. It was legacy. And it was a war over who defines the path for the next generation of men. Grant represents structure, ambition, and a system that, for all its flaws, gave him wealth. He teaches men how to navigate it, how to borrow strategically, how to scale their life by learning how the game is played. And to many, that's empowering. But Tate? He represents rebellion, sovereignty, total independence. He teaches men to reject the system outright, not to negotiate with it, not to win within it, but to escape it completely. He doesn't just say, be successful, he says, be untouchable. And for a generation raised on promises of freedom while buried in college debt, rent traps, and fake gurus, the idea of being untouchable hits hard. Still, there were cracks. People began digging into Tate's businesses, into his platform subscriptions, affiliate structures, income sources. They started asking, if you're so against the system, why are you monetizing it better than anyone? And the same thing happened to Cardone. Viewers questioned his claims about passive income, scrutinized his real estate deals, looked into his public filings. The deeper people looked, the more the lines blurred. No one was clean, no one was perfect, but both still claimed to be the truth. Which raises the question, is there even a truth anymore, or just better marketing? And if these two icons of wealth are locked in a war of ideals, where do the rest of us fit in? Are we learning from them, or just funding the show? The man's name wasn't famous, not outside the circles that mattered, but inside the world of ambition, self-help, and online money-making tribes, he had a quiet reputation. The guy who trained under both Grant and Tate, not as a fan, not as a subscriber, but as a true student. First-row seats, first-hand access. And now, for the first time, he was ready to speak. His name is Jake, 31 years old, American, former athlete turned entrepreneur, with the kind of quiet charisma that doesn't ask for attention, but still keeps it. He didn't come to expose anyone. He wasn't looking for drama. But what he shared in a 12-minute interview shook both camps harder than anything either of the kings had said themselves. "I joined Cardone's program in 2018, he said, looking calm but firm. Paid for it with my last bit of savings. I learned how to pitch, how to build funnels, how to think in terms of assets. It helped. But I also felt like I was becoming part of something bigger than me, something I didn't fully control." He paused. "Then in 2022, I switched to Tate's world. Different energy, pure aggression, total control, no excuses. And for a while, that changed everything. I went from asking how to make money to asking how to own my life." Jake wasn't emotional. He wasn't bitter. But the story he told cut deeper than any online quote ever could. Because it wasn't about which mentor was better. It was about what happens to people who try to follow both. "Cardone teaches you how to move fast in a system that isn't yours," Jake said. "Tate teaches you how to destroy the system and build your own rules. Both ideas sound powerful, until you realize they demand completely different versions of you, and you can't serve both gods." That line spread like wildfire. You can't serve both gods. Clips of Jake's story began circulating. Some praised him for speaking truth. Others attacked him for being disloyal. But what no one could deny was the reality he described, that modern mentorship isn't just education anymore. It's identity programming. And if you're not careful, you don't just learn tactics. You become someone else. This hit hard. Because for the first time, people saw themselves in the story. They weren't just fans watching Tate and Cardone throw punches. They were the ones getting bruised, trying to figure out whose path would actually work, and whose would leave them broken. And then something even stranger happened. Both Tate and Cardone reacted, separately, without naming Jake, but you could feel it in the tone. Cardone posted a short clip. "Don't let people who quit define your path. They always blame the teacher when the homework gets hard." Tate responded with a one-line quote on X. "Weak men confuse chaos with freedom." But the damage was done. For the first time, the spotlight shifted from the mentors to the movement. And what people began to ask wasn't, who's richer or who's more alpha? They began asking, why are we even listening to anyone in the first place? Has success become another addiction? Another identity trap? Are we following men like Cardone and Tate because we trust them, or because we're too lost to trust ourselves? Because what Jake's story showed wasn't just the cost of learning, it was the price of blind loyalty. The weight of becoming someone else's version of successful, only to wake up and realize you don't even recognize your own reflection. And yet, despite the fallout, despite the questions, people kept watching. Views kept climbing. More podcasts took sides. Even brands tried to ride the wave, using Tate's quotes or Cardone's formulas in ads and content. The scandal had become its own economy. But there was one final twist coming. One move that neither side saw coming. Not Jake, not Grant, not even Andrew. A document. A signature. A deal. Something Tate had once sworn he would never touch. And when that leaked, it was a Tuesday. Quiet. No teasers, no promo clips. Just a single PDF link, dropped anonymously in a Telegram group with 800 followers, titled simply, The Deal. Nobody knew where it came from. But within 30 minutes, it was everywhere. At first glance, it looked like a typical partnership agreement. 2 pages, clean formatting, a few signatures, until you reached the third line. Under one of the columns, Andrew Tate Holdings FZCO, and beside it the logo of a US-based digital fund, a firm partially owned by Grant Cardone's private investment group. It wasn't just surprising, it was blasphemy. For months, Tate had stood on the mountain, shouting to the world that he built alone, that he needed nothing, no leverage, no partners, no investors, only will, muscle, and iron resolve. Now proof existed that somewhere along the line he had accepted help, financial or strategic, from the very system he claimed to reject. Comment sections exploded. Screenshots, Reddit threads, YouTubers went live instantly, dissecting every clause in the document. Some tried to defend him, others simply stared, betrayed. Because it wasn't the deal itself that shook people. It was the illusion that cracked. And the one person who didn't speak was Andrew Tate. He said nothing for 2 days. Not a tweet, not a stream, not a whisper. And in that silence, the storm swirled. Cardone, of course, didn't wait. He released a clip in his usual tone, sharp and composed. The truth always wins. You can scream louder, flash harder, act tougher. But at the end of the day, real business doesn't care about noise. It cares about results. But by now, the audience had changed. They weren't listening the same way anymore. They weren't as hungry for domination quotes or success formulas, because something deeper had shifted. Something honest. For the first time, people were seeing their mentors as men. Not symbols, not superheroes, just men. Fallible, strategic, and occasionally hypocritical. And strangely, that made things clearer. Because maybe that's the whole point. Maybe it was never about choosing sides. Maybe it was about seeing through the smoke. Not to cancel anyone, not to worship anyone, but to finally understand. Every millionaire has their secret alliances. Every self-made man has scars you'll never see. Every lesson has a price. And in the end, both Tate and Cardone had built something powerful. Not just brands, but belief systems. And whether you agreed with them or not, they had one thing in common. They made you look at yourself. So now the question flips. This story was never really about Andrew Tate. It was never really about Grant Cardone. It was about you, the man watching this, the woman analyzing it, the young person trying to figure out who to trust. Ask yourself, are you chasing freedom or just performance? Are you copying confidence or building your own? Are you buying someone else's definition of success or writing your own? Because at the end of this video, there's only one person left in the room, and they're staring at you in the mirror. Drop a comment. What's one belief you've had about money or success that's changed after hearing this story? Hit subscribe, because we're not done asking hard questions. We're just getting started.